The warning. California did not see coming. The FBI sent a bulletin to California police departments on March 11, 2026, that most Americans have not seen. First obtained by ABC News, it states that as of early February 2026, weeks before a single American bomb dropped on Iran, Iran allegedly aspired to launch a surprise drone attack from an unidentified vessel off the U.S. coast, targeting unspecified locations in California. The FBI is clear about what it does not know. No confirmed timing, no identified target, no named perpetrators. Multiple officials told CBS News that the intelligence is uncorroborated. But intelligence agencies do not issue national bulletins for noise. On March 8th, the FBI, DHS, and the National Counterterrorism Center disclosed they had intercepted an encrypted broadcast that was believed to be Iranian in origin, transmitted to multiple countries simultaneously. Starting the day the war began, a pattern of violence emerged on Western soil that federal investigators are still working to explain. Together, these three layers describe a country that was preparing to bring this war to American soil before a single U.S. missile ever left its launcher. The weapons Iran built to carry that out are not what most people picture. Understanding them is the only way to grasp what the FBI is actually warning about. How Iran built a weapon America had to copy. The drone at the center of the FBI concern is called the Shahed 130. It is about 3.5 meters long, with a 2.5 meter wingspan. It flies at roughly 180 kilometers per hour, slower than a commercial aircraft. Experienced soldiers who have faced them in Ukraine describe the sound they make before impact as a moped engine. Iran can produce them for between $20,000 and $50,000 per unit. The advanced variants carry between 30 and 50 kilograms of explosives and can reach targets up to 1,200 miles away. Those numbers matter because of what they mean for defense economics. When the US or its Gulf allies intercept a Shahed drone, they are not using a weapon that costs $20,000. They are firing Patriot interceptors, SM-6 naval missiles, or Tomahawk cruise missiles. Kelly Grieco, a senior fellow at the Stimson Center, calculated that for every $1 Iran spends manufacturing a Shahed, it costs the UAE approximately $20 to $28 to intercept it. That math compounds fast at scale. The Pentagon reportedly fired around 400 Tomahawk missiles to intercept Iranian drones and projectiles in the first weeks of the conflict, approximately 10% of the total U.S. Tomahawk inventory, at an estimated cost of $800 million. Iran did not develop the Shahed in isolation. It spent years incorporating lessons from Russia's mass deployment of the same drones in Ukraine, adding anti-jamming antennas, electronic warfare-resistant navigation systems, and upgraded warhead configurations. The result is a weapon so effective that the U.S. military reverse-engineered it. U.S. Central Command confirmed that its new Lucas drone, the low-cost unmanned combat attack system, was used in the Operation Epic Fury strikes, and acknowledged directly that the Lucas is based on Iran's Shahed 136 design. The world's most powerful military looked at Iran's cheap drone, studied it, and built a copy. That single fact communicates more about what kind of weapon this is than any technical specification. In the first week of Operation Epic Fury, Iran launched an estimated 2,000 Shahed drones across the Gulf region. According to CSYS, the UAE alone absorbed 1,422 detected drones and 246 missiles between March 1st and March 8th, 1,668 total recorded strikes, representing roughly 55% of all strikes recorded in the dataset. Those drones struck a building in Bahrain, a radar system in Kuwait, an airport, and a high-rise in the UAE, and the U.S. Embassy compound in Saudi Arabia. On March 3rd, Trump administration officials told lawmakers in a closed-door Capitol Hill briefing that Iran's Shahed drones represent a major challenge and that U.S. air defenses will not be able to intercept them all. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, both acknowledged in that briefing that the drones were posing a bigger problem than anticipated. This was not a briefing about a distant foreign battlefield. This was the Secretary of Defense telling Congress in private that American defenses are being outpaced by a weapon Iran can assemble for the cost of a used car. The specific feature that connects the FBI bulletin to the Shahed itself is range. A vessel positioned far enough offshore does not need to be anywhere near California's coastline to put drones in range of the state. And Iran spent 3 years building exactly that kind of vessel. The question is whether that vessel can still be used, and that answer is more complicated than a single headline suggests. The ship Iran built to do this, and what happened to it. Iran's plan for projecting drone power beyond the Strait of Hormuz was not improvised after the war started. It was a 3-year construction project, completed and commissioned months before Operation Epic Fury began. The ship is called the Iris Shahed Bagheri. It is the first purpose-built drone carrier anywhere on Earth, a converted commercial container ship transformed into a full naval aviation platform. Commissioned in February 2025, the Shahed Bagheri was built from the former container vessel Pararan, a 240-meter hull displacing more than 40,000 tons, fitted with an angled flight deck, a ski-jump drone launch ramp, and an approximately 180-meter runway. Iranian state TV footage from its commissioning showed the full deck loaded with Ababil 3N carrier drones, stealth drones designated the JAS 313, and Mohajer 6 reconnaissance and strike drones. The IRGC Navy commander stated publicly that the vessel had an operational range of 22,000 nautical miles and could remain at sea for up to 1 year without returning to port. Iran's strategic logic for the ship was explicit in its design: a mobile offshore base capable of pushing drone operations beyond the strait and into the Gulf of Oman, the Arabian Sea, and farther. A vessel that could position itself in international waters, far from any U.S. base, and launch strikes that no one would see coming until the drones were already airborne. On March 2nd, 2026, 4 days after Operation Epic Fury launched, U.S. Central Command announced it had struck the Shahed Bagheri. Footage released on March 6th showed the vessel fully ablaze. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper stated the carrier was among approximately 30 Iranian warships destroyed in the opening phase of the operation. The destruction of that ship removed Iran's most capable platform for offshore drone warfare. But the FBI bulletin was drafted from intelligence collected in early February, before the war, before the ship was sunk, and before anyone on the American side knew what Iran had already set in motion. The plan the bulletin describes does not require a dedicated drone carrier. It requires a ship, a supply of Shahed drones, and a crew willing to execute. Iran operates a large fleet of civilian and commercial vessels. The Shahed Bagheri is gone. That is not the same as the threat being gone. A senior law enforcement official told ABC News it is believed the 12-day bombardment has severely degraded Iran's capability to carry out such an attack. Severely degraded is not eliminated. The weapon Iran intended to use from that vessel is still being produced, and it is not the only threat now in motion. The signal that came before the drones. 3 days before the drone bulletin became public, a different and in some ways more unsettling alert was already circulating through U.S. law enforcement. On March 8, the FBI, DHS, and the National Counterterrorism Center issued a joint bulletin describing something U.S. intelligence had intercepted in the days immediately after Ali Khamenei was killed on February 28. U.S. signals analysts had picked up a new encrypted broadcast, assessed as likely Iranian in origin, that had been transmitted to multiple countries simultaneously. The transmission was not sent over the internet. It was not sent over a cellular network. It was sent by shortwave radio, a method specifically chosen because it cannot be blocked, cannot be traced to a specific recipient, and can reach anyone with the right equipment and the right encryption key anywhere on Earth. The intelligence bulletin cited preliminary signals analysis of the transmission and described it as relayed across multiple countries through a new station with international rebroadcast characteristics. The method is called number station tradecraft, the same technique used by Cold War intelligence agencies to pass activation instructions to deep cover operatives who had no other means of secure contact. You broadcast a string of numbers on an open frequency. Only the person holding the encryption key knows what those numbers mean. Everyone else hears static. The alert stated directly that the transmission may have been intended to activate or provide instructions to prepositioned sleeper assets operating outside the originating country. It also stated that the exact contents of the transmission could not currently be determined, and that there was no operational threat tied to a specific location. Law enforcement agencies were instructed to increase monitoring of suspicious radio frequency activity going forward. What the alert did not say, but what the broader record makes clear, is that this transmission was not Iran's first attempt to build infrastructure for retaliation inside Western countries. The Washington Institute for Near East Policy has documented at least 27 Iranian-linked plots or surveillance operations connected to the United States over the past decade. Federal authorities say they disrupted at least 17 Iranian plots on U.S. soil following the 2020 killing of IRGC commander Qasem Soleimani. These are not theoretical capabilities. They are a documented track record, active across multiple administrations. CFR Senior Fellow Bruce Hoffman flagged something in his March 5 report that adds a specific operational dimension to all of this. Just days before Operation Epic Fury launched, members of the FBI's Specialized Counterintelligence Unit responsible for monitoring Iranian threats were reportedly fired, removed as part of the broader personnel cuts tied to the 2022 Mar-a-Lago investigation. The unit built specifically to track exactly this kind of threat was reduced at the precise moment the threat became most acute. That timing is not an accusation. It is a documented fact about the state of American counterintelligence readiness as this situation unfolded. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The encrypted broadcast was intercepted. Its contents remain unknown. What it triggered in the days that followed is not unknown at all. What happened on the ground when the war started? The shift from abstract threat to concrete violence happened within hours of Operation Epic Fury's launch on February 28th. That same day, a gunman opened fire on a crowded bar in the 6th Street Entertainment District in Austin, Texas, killing 2 people and wounding 14 others before police shot and killed him. The shooter was a 53-year-old, naturalized U.S. citizen originally from Senegal. The FBI opened a terrorism investigation immediately. CBS News reported the shooter's social media activity showed ties to Islamic extremist content. The investigation remains open. On March 3rd, shots were fired at 2 synagogues in Toronto. A bomb exploded near a synagogue in Liège, Belgium, damaging the building. On March 10th, shots were fired at the U.S. consulate in Toronto. Toronto police found approximately 10 shell casings on the street outside and damage to the consulate door. No injuries were reported. No suspect has been named. None of these incidents have been officially attributed to the Iranian government. That is precisely the point. Iran's historical approach to asymmetric warfare is not to send uniformed soldiers. It is to use proxies, inspired actors, and pre-positioned networks in ways that create maximum disruption while maintaining maximum deniability. According to a Homeland Security assessment cited in a CFR report, Iran relies on individuals with pre-existing access to target countries, people already there, already in place, waiting. Chris Swecker, former assistant FBI director, told Fox News that both Hezbollah and Hamas have maintained active networks inside the United States since the 1980s. If ever there is going to be a Hezbollah cell or a Hamas cell act in the United States in a violent way, he said, it is now. That statement was made during the first week of the war. As of March 12th, 7 U.S. service members have been killed by Iranian strikes overseas. The Pentagon confirmed. 140 service members have been wounded. The violence has not stayed in the Middle East. The shooting in Austin may or may not be connected to Tehran. The attack on the Toronto consulate may or may not be connected to Tehran. What is documented is this. Federal law enforcement intercepted a shortwave encrypted activation signal, issued a drone attack warning to California law enforcement, and simultaneously watched a pattern of violence emerge against Western targets in the same week. These events are not proven to be connected. They are not proven to be unconnected either. And the people responsible for making that determination are working with a reduced counterintelligence unit and an uncorroborated intelligence picture. What happens next, and why no one can call it? The escalation path is specific and traceable. If Iran retains any functional offshore vessel capability, the drone threat to the U.S. West Coast does not expire, it waits. The Shahed 136 does not need to be launched from close range. With a 1,200-mile operational range, a vessel positioned well into the Pacific, in international waters where the U.S. Navy has no legal authority to intercept without provocation, is a viable launch platform. The U.S. has no dedicated coastal drone defense network equivalent to the layered systems that Israel or Ukraine operate. The Patriot systems and THAAD batteries that have been partially protecting Gulf installations are deployed overseas, not positioned along the California coastline. Patricia Bazilchik of CS-1S Missile Defense Project described Iran's drone strategy plainly. The logic is to expend cheap drones early to wear down air defenses, opening them up to more damaging attacks later. On the U.S. mainland, there is no equivalent to the air defense infrastructure currently deployed in the Gulf. The FBI bulletin describes a threat that arrives before a defense posture has been established to meet it. The de-escalation path depends on a variable no one controls cleanly. President Trump told reporters he was not worried about Iran-backed attacks on U.S. soil. He said the operation was very complete, pretty much, and described Iran as having no navy, no communications, and no air force. That assessment reflects genuine military degradation. Iran has lost approximately 30 warships, its drone carrier, and significant missile infrastructure in 12 days of sustained strikes. But Iran's supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei, through state-linked media, has framed the conflict as a long-term economic siege. Iran currently holds approximately 155 million barrels of crude in floating storage outside the strait, roughly 100 days of export capacity already positioned beyond the reach of U.S. strikes. It built its financial reserve for exactly this kind of prolonged standoff. The actor whose decision matters most to the domestic threat picture may not be in Tehran or Washington. China has called publicly for unfettered international shipping to resume. It purchases roughly 40% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz and holds significant economic leverage over Iran. which sells China nearly all of its exported crude. If Beijing applies pressure on Tehran to stand down its asymmetric operations, including the offshore drone program and the activation of overseas networks, the threat timeline compresses. If Beijing stays silent, Iran has no near-term incentive to call off a campaign it prepared for years in advance. The system being tested. Every previous Iranian threat to the US mainland was abstract, a plot disrupted before execution, an indictment unsealed after the fact, a sanctions package applied after intelligence was gathered. What is different about March 2026 is that the threat arrived in written form from the FBI itself, describing a plan Iran made before the war began, built around a weapon that US defense officials have already told Congress they cannot fully stop. The Shahed 136 costs $20,000 to produce and up to $800,000 to intercept with the systems the US currently deploys. Iran can reportedly build tens of thousands of them. The US produced approximately 620 Patriot interceptors in 2025. Annual SM-6 production has historically averaged around 120 units per year. These are not theoretical constraints. They are production figures that define a real gap between the speed at which Iran can generate threats and the speed at which the US can respond to them. IRGC official Abraham Jabari said on March 3rd that the strait is closed. If anyone tries to pass, the heroes of the Revolutionary Guard and the regular Navy will set those ships ablaze. That statement was made by a force that had already struck more than a dozen vessels in 10 days, sunk a rescue tug, and killed crew members from at least 3 countries in the waterway. The same doctrine, swarm and overwhelm to impose cost, is what the FBI bulletin describes as being applied not to a shipping lane, but to American soil. The FBI warning does not say an attack is coming. It says Iran wanted to do this, had a vessel capable of doing it, and built the plan before the war started. The drone carrier is gone. The drones are not. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.